Hey Minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and on this episode of the Gauntlet, I want to talk about Steampunk Ancient Incas. I personally think that play-on-base factions can be very strong because of their ability to use both of their plays every turn. Play-on-base actions are among the easiest actions to play. You may not always have a minion in play, but there are always bases in play, and I wanted one team that had two factions of this nature. But it's very easy to create some crazy combinations that go beyond the power level I'm looking for, so I settled on Steampunk Incas, which I consider to be consistently strong, but still beatable. Play-on-base factions have a tendency to care about actions of that nature and nothing else. Change of venue technically works on play-on-minion actions as well, but that doesn't matter to this team, and it's been superseded anyway. By combining these two factions, 14 of your 20 actions are play-on-base actions. You're going to see them over the course of the game. Not necessarily the ones you want, but there are ways around that. This means that Captain Ahab will be very mobile. Llama will always be able to pivot. Steam Man will always be 4 power. Incan Engineer will be relevant even when drawn late. Mechanic will have a lot of interesting options. Child of the Sun will play plenty of extra actions. Sapa Inca will trigger early and often. Steam Queen will just kinda be there. Minion abilities will rarely be wasted. What I like about this team is that it fixes a lot of issues for me with Llama. Llama is a weaker Johnny, and I happen to love Johnny. Llama forces you to pivot, and the nature of the Ancient Incas is that they don't pivot well. They add power slowly and require committing multiple actions to the same base. The Ancient Incas want stacking bonuses, so if I remove one from the stack, I'm weakening future plays while creating a subpar play now or correcting a subpar play in the past. But the Steampunks have great pivot potential. You can absolutely play Agromotive or Rotary Slug Thrower as finishers, but I love them as bait cards. I seed them on previous turns, and a player starts jumping on that base knowing I will go big and break that base and don't want to be left out. I can Zeppelin or Captain Ahab over to start triggering those actions. But Rotary Slug Thrower is an excellent action for pivot strategies. You think that I'm going to move all my minions over there, but I'm actually going to transfer the action to my true target all along. Llama can be an instant change of venue for a card like Difference Engine to allow it to provide new value. The Steampunks have such explosive actions that they don't always need their minion play to break a base, which enables this type of play. Zeppelin is also a great pivot action because you can use it again. You can move a minion off the Zeppelin base, then Llama to refresh its talent, and move another minion to the new Zeppelin base. If you are converging on a Rotary Slug Thrower base, you added a lot of power and still have your action play, which could be a well-timed Agromotive for another 5 power. Another aspect of this team that I enjoy is that they can attack you from a minion swarm or action swarm. Armory can be a good amount of power in its own right, while Rotary Slug Thrower is still a fantastic action. Armory can also give you presence on a base that is difficult to remove. It functions like a kaiju action, but only if you have another action there. That can make Armory vulnerable, but given that action destruction is pretty rare in high quantities, you are probably okay. For everything else, you have Steam Queen. Both factions have good card draw, which I always enjoy. Difference Engine is a pretty safe way to get an extra card every turn, particularly if you can stage it on an undesirable base. But there is only one copy, so you may never see it. But Temple of the Sun is a great fallback option, and my favorite Incan action to lead with on a base, because the Incan abilities stack. This gives you the potential for power without adding power, allowing you to slowly add fortress walls and then finish with Armory, drawing additional cards over several turns. In addition, the Incan Engineers act as a form of card draw by filtering cards from your deck. Card draw is extremely important because this team can have a massive play. Sapa Inca and Golden Condor. Change of venue is pretty weak in my opinion. I barely use it. But Golden Condor? Now that's a payoff. It can allow you to trigger Sapa Inca and Fortress Wall several times, hopefully finishing with Armory. And you can play them in the order of your choice based on need. Low on cards? Lead with Temple of the Sun. Need the power? Lead with Fortress Walls. I find myself drawn to cards more often than not because the Incas can actually run out of actions quickly, even with the Steampunks. They do have Kipo strings, a mini mechanic, but most of the recursion is tied into Ashlar Masonry, which is an after the base special. It's great to play if you can get it, but there have been many times when I was forced to go big with action plays despite not having that card, and a failure to play it can starve you for most of the game. That's why having the Steampunk actions is so critical, not just because it means extra cards to draw, but extra power. Extra recursion doesn't hurt either. You can play many of these actions with Child of the Sun, and I love that Zeppelins can move him to or from position when you need the extra actions, to prevent you from investing too much on one base. And here's where it gets really crazy, because Child of the Sun benefits from the same loophole as Rainbrock. Child of the Sun states, after the first time you play an action on this base each turn, you may play an extra action. Because he is mobile, you could technically move him to another base, play an action there, and he would trigger again. So Child of the Sun can trigger many times depending on how many times you move him to a unique base. Golden Condor is great because it gives you the granularity to play the exact amount of actions you need, and you can play them anywhere, in any order, on any base. This is their best chance at a multi-base attack, particularly when the base itself is part of the attack. I have to admit, I feel it's somewhat unfair that play-on-base action factions get more of an advantage from their bases than most bases. And for these particular two, it's really crazy. Workshop, if you lead with Temple of the Sun, can potentially break in a single turn, without any loss of resource, because of Ashlar Masonry. It's happened. Inventor Salon is a little bit more open-ended, which I prefer. But Machu Picchu and Cuzco perfectly align for this team. It would be brutal if Signs in the Stars would emerge any of these bases, because then you become even more efficient. A base where you can play an extra action and draw a card, maybe even more. Steampunk Incas are winning that base, and the next one, which will be almost as good next turn. To fight this team, you have to go after their engine minions. If you can remove them, their action output is halved, which hurts the stacking nature of their play. The mechanic can provide instant power, but Armory at times has felt slow because it doesn't count itself. Don't get me wrong, it can be strong, but there have been plenty of times where I felt like I was getting shortchanged. Fortunately, the Steampunks make up for this with quantity. You know that there are certain minions that they need to deliver long-term value, and you have to take them out. You might think that the Dread Gazebo is a weakness, and it can be, but it can also be a strength. Because, when combined with Ornate Dome, other play-on-base teams are restricted to a single base for playing their cards, and that really hurts them. Steampunk Incas still have power counters from the Incas, and movement from the Steampunks, initiated by Zeppelin and to a lesser extent Royal Highway, so they still have a way to finish off the Dread Gazebo. Obviously, Secret Agent is going to be a big weakness, and I do like how the Penguins can provide their own burst. Steampunk Incas have no before the base specials, or ways of removing minions, so it's really a matter of big plays. They have the potential for large power drops, but their instant power drop still relies on the classic mechanic play. Because of this, I like the Vikings against them, because grabbing their payoff actions can be brutal. Fortress walls are nice, but they are slow. Stealing the right actions can be brutal. If I stole Golden Condor, I just hold on to it all day long, and the surprise play goes down significantly. This is still a great team, and they are going to go far, so it's important to have a solid game plan. It can be tricky to determine exactly how much power they can drop in a single turn, so don't be left off of any base. If you spread out too, you can time your burst well, and you can potentially have them waste a lot of good cards. I played the Incas a lot, and their overall lack of recursion has always been my biggest complaint. Force them to overspend, and it can hurt quite a bit. What do you think of Steampunk Incas? Let me know in the comments. This is video number 24, so there are 8 teams and 16 factions remaining. How many pairings do you think you can name? On Monday, I'm going to do something fun and different. There will be a special video airing at 12 that will lead into the regular video at 1. I would love to hear your bold predictions on what it is. It's just a good opportunity to have some fun and celebrate this time of year. That's it for this team. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.